Joining us to debate this, Shashi Tharoor, Chandan Mitra, Lord Meghnad Desai, Lisa Curtis, Senior Fellow at the Heritage Foundation, and Mihir Sharma, Associate Editor of the Business Standard. Mr. Tharoor, let me come to you first. By transferring the diplomat Devyani Khobragade to the permanent mission, India's permanent mission at the United Nations, does this guarantee her that diplomatic immunity, or is there a process through which her appointment has to be accepted by the UN before this becomes just a formality?
The question of the UN's accepting a particular individual doesn't arise. At Devyani's level, once she is assigned to a function by the government of India, she automatically benefits from all the privileges and immunities associated with that function.
That being said, since the problem with her, since these visa laws which she allegedly broke took place when she was in the Indian Consulate General in New York, could there not be a case made out that in fact the crime, the so-called crime that she committed, had taken place earlier?
Well, look, that's up to the Americans and how their legal system wishes to pursue this matter. We believe the entire thing is misconceived, because it's not as if she, as a diplomatic representative of India, was engaging somebody from the American labor market, as is very customary with diplomats from a number of countries, and certainly in most developing countries, including all our neighbors. We have the same tradition of domestic help accompanying diplomats to assist them with their representational duties. It is extremely common practice to take people from home, because they are supposed to be able to assist you with everything from your cuisine, your style of entertainment, your putting across your messages of your culture to your guests. And therefore, when you take somebody from India, or from whichever country you're from, to your overseas assignment, and often take that person with you to your next overseas assignment, the question of applying US labor laws becomes a particularly peculiar one. I think the US does need to look very carefully at whether this makes any sense to apply American labor laws to Indians in this situation. And the Indian government too needs to ensure that it provides domestic servants in this kind of situation with a different status rather than those of ordinary individuals, though of course they all go with official visas given to them because they're accompanying Indian diplomats.
So it is a bit surprising
that this has all happened
of
the way
domestic
it has.
help.
I might stress there must be several hundred diplomats in the same situation in New York.
Shashi, should the government of India pay the salaries?
Well, at the moment, no. At the moment, the arrangement is allowances are given to diplomats that will cover, amongst other things, the costs of their domestic help. But usually the relationship is between the diplomat and the domestic helper, and the salary is paid by one to the other. There is an allowance from the government, but the domestic helper is not on the government staff rolls. That appears to be part of the problem here.
No, should that change is what my question is.
Well, in my view, I think it would make sense for it to change, but I understand that there are various administrative and financial considerations that would make an easy decision of this nature difficult. Because in fact, if you look at the complication, a domestic staff member actually has a relationship with an individual and not with the government. If you give that person a government contract, what happens if the individual and the domestic helper are dissatisfied with each other and wish to part? What is the status of the individual then? There are complications of that nature. Would it also add to the government payroll excessively if they were taken onto the government roster? These are questions that the finance minister and others will have to discuss and decide. I'm just raising the fact that though it would be a good solution, the solution requires a number of administrative factors to be considered.
Shashi, before you go off, I just have two more quick questions to ask. One of the steps taken by the government of India yesterday was to look into the employees or perhaps American nationals who work in the US school here in New Delhi. Is there a serious concern that they may have violated visa rules in our country, or they aren't paying income tax?
Well, let me say, Vishnu, that a cardinal principle of diplomatic relations is reciprocity. We have treated American diplomats, including consular agents in this country, in a very generous spirit. We haven't stuck to the letter of the Vienna Convention on Consular Rights. We've given them more immunities and privileges than they are strictly entitled to. We've given them access to the customs area of airports. We've been very liberal in allowances, ID cards, various other facilities for their spouses to be allowed to work, all sorts of things. And we have made it easy for them to function in India. It's part of the spirit of the relationship. We expected that spirit to be reciprocated. Sadly, in the case of Devyani Khobragade, this spirit has been, frankly, ignored or vitiated by the conduct of the American authorities. And therefore, in the same spirit of reciprocity, we are asking ourselves why we should not interpret the letter of the law just as strictly as they appear to be doing. That doesn't mean we're about to strip search some wandering American consul, but we are certainly going to apply the same standards that are being applied to our diplomats in New York. We're going to ask for the letter as well as the spirit of Indian laws to be strictly upheld. We are going to insist that any additional privilege not called for by existing agreements will be withdrawn, at least for now. The signal is very clear. We are unhappy. We believe that there has been a very, very serious action undertaken that is simply not in accordance with the kind of spirit with which we expected our friendly relationship to be conducted. And we are going to show that this displeasure, this outrage that we all feel, and that was expressed so vividly in Parliament today, I was there, I heard the speeches by various members, that this is conveyed to the Americans in absolutely unambiguous terms.
What happened was unacceptable. A final question, Shashi, before you go, a final question.
You cannot
what does India want the United States to do now? A simple apology, or the entire case against Devyani Khobragade has to be dropped? Because they say that it's not easy for them to just drop it. There is a process through which it has to be reviewed, and that's not necessarily in the hands of the State Department.
Look, first of all, I'm not the Minister of External Affairs, and it's wrong for me to be announcing negotiating demands on a mass medium like television. All I can say is that obviously for all Indians, the ideal outcome would be if indeed the case were dropped. But certainly we would like the US to review the entire conduct of this affair. We would like the fundamentals to be looked at again, the status of domestic helpers of diplomats. We would like a certain review to be undertaken of procedures that could so blithely treat a friendly country like India and its diplomats in this unacceptable manner. We would like, in other words, for a pretty thoroughgoing examination of what went wrong. We didn't start this problem. We didn't create this problem. We want those who've created the problem to look themselves in the eye and ask themselves why they did so. We value this relationship with the United States. The US is an extremely important partner and a friend as far as we are concerned. But friends don't treat friends this way, and we cannot value this friendship more than they value our friendship. It has to be two-way traffic.
Lord Meghnad Desai, I'll come to you in a moment. I just want to quickly go across to Chandan Mitra. Chandan, you've heard what Shashi Tharoor has had to say. Is the BJP completely in sync with what the government is doing, or do you feel that the government needs to have done more?
Well, at the moment, I think the government has acted with a great deal of responsibility, and at the same time has shown the Americans thus far and no further. American law has been used repeatedly to harass Indian diplomats in the US. This is not the first such case. You will recall, Vishnu, that our highly respected former president, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, was searched on the gates of a flight he was boarding to go to the US. We all remember the humiliation Mr. George Fernandez, as defense minister, went through when he was strip searched. Other Indian diplomats have faced this harassment. Almost every Indian traveling to the US, including myself, have faced a lot of humiliation at the hand of security officials and airport authorities. I think the time has indeed come to give a fitting reply to this and tell the Americans, whom we treat almost as if with deference, that this deferential treatment of Americans has to stop. You treat us decently, we'll treat you decently too. But if you try to take on the role of Globocop and impose your laws on the rest of the world, that is not acceptable. And I think the US has got the message, and we hope that they will reform.
Lord Meghnad Desai, you were disagreeing with some of the points Shashi had mentioned earlier on. Go ahead with what your concerns are.
Let me say first of all, there are two Indian women involved in this case. Sangeeta Richard's rights also matter. She also has human rights. She was paid a measly sum She was treated as a wage slave, and she was treated so badly, she ran away from Devyani Khobragade's home in June 2013.
So that's never been an allegation that she was treated badly. So that has never been an allegation that she was treated badly. The issue is of her not earning enough.
Now listen to me. She filed a complaint to the New York police, and the crime is not only falsifying the visa, but treating somebody like a wage slave, which is a very serious crime in America. You know, just because she's an Indian citizen, she can't be treated like dirt. You can treat her like dirt in Delhi.
But how was she treated like dirt, sir, when every expense of hers was made?
Somebody's IFS. Just because somebody's IFS, they don't have immunity so that they can treat somebody like a wage slave. Diplomatic immunity does not...
Okay, Chandan Mitra wants to come in.
Mistreating.
Lord Meghnad, Chandan Mitra wants to come in.
She has treated a fellow Indian badly.
Okay, all right, one moment, sir. Chandan Mitra disagrees completely with what you're saying. Go ahead, Mr. Mitra.
The issue is not her diplomatic immunity, the issue is her humanity.
I'm sorry.
He says it's a human rights issue. Chandan Mitra replied to that.
Sangeeta Richard so badly? That is the question.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
Chandan
Mitra, go ahead.
Nobody cares about Sangeeta Richard. They all care about Devyani Khobragade. IFS, yes, but a poor Dalit
all right,
tribal woman,
sir,
no.
you made that point. I'll come back to you on that point you're making. But you made the point, let Chandan reply. Chandan Mitra, go ahead, sir.
Yes, I didn't expect anything better from someone who is a lord in a British House of Parliament and does not ever live in England because he's on TV all the time.
What about the British House of Lords? Let's talk about human rights. Let us talk about human rights.
Why should
Let's
I?
talk about human rights.
Dictate my.
Don't talk about my rights. Don't talk about her rights.
You cannot dictate your agenda to me.
Talk about Sangeeta
You are behaving like
rights.
the perfect. Just as Britain is a junior partner and a lackey of the United States in world affairs, you are talking just as a representative of that lackey.
Talk about the rights of an Indian woman.
I'm sorry.
Talk about the rights of an Indian tribal woman.
Who are you?
An Indian tribal woman.
Who are you to
She
judge?
has been misused.
Who are you to judge?
Has been abused.
I'm
She
sorry.
has complained
Who are
to
you
New
to
York
judge?
police.
All right, Lord Meghnad
Lord
Desai, you made a point. Let Chandan respond to that point, and then
you
I'll come back to you, sir. We are not running away. We've got plenty of time. Chandan Mitra, go ahead with your point. Yeah, go ahead.
Let's show human rights.
This non-resident Lord Desai, has
I
he
may be
investigated?
Lord, I may not
Does
be
he know
Lord.
how she
Forget
was-
about that.
How
Let us
she
talk about
was
the human
treated.
rights of a woman.
What? I'm coming to it. If Lord, quote unquote Lord Desai,
Leave me out
will
of
have the
this.
patience to listen.
Leave my lordship out of this.
No,
Okay,
why
that's
should I
fair,
leave it
Chandan.
out? That's why you're
That's
talking
fair.
like
He's
this.
okay. Let's not get personal. Let's not get personal. But
No, I'm not getting personal.
okay, so answer
But,
his question, sir. He
what-
says it's a human rights issue. It's
somebody
not an
sitting
issue of
in
strict
India
diplomacy alone.
and
Can I make a point?
I will
Now-
come to you, Lisa. I know you've been waiting.
human
Just bear
rights-
with me.
Human rights issues are secondary at this point of time. Lord Desai does not know what rights were violated, if at all. And as Mr. Shashi Tharoor just pointed out,
what rights were
that
violated.
this is customary,
If you report it,
and
she's
there
complained
was
to the New York
nothing wrong.
police.
It was a contract and agreement between the employer and employee. There is sufficient evidence to now show that this woman who was employed by Devyani was actually only plotting all the time to jump this employment and seek permanent residence in the United States. And she has been, therefore, her husband was put up to file that complaint.
She
and
ran
now
away
she
because
becomes
And her husband has been
treated
given a
as
visa
an honored
with her
guest of
children
the
and is in the United States now. Right? That's just happened.
But
That
before
news
that,
of
her
that has
husband
just
and son
come.
had been
But
put
Lisa
in jail.
Curtis had a point to make as well. Lisa, go ahead.
Well, I think the major issue is, was she accorded the appropriate measures that are due a diplomat? And clearly, all signs point to the fact that she was not. So I think it is time for the U.S. government to apologize. Not necessarily for the arrest, because if U.S. laws were broken, then due process must move forward. But to simply apologize for the way the arrest was carried out. The U.S. and India have an important relationship. We have a lot at stake with our agenda, and we really can't afford to allow this to continue and to become even more inflamed than things already are. You know, clearly India's in an election season. Prime Minister Singh is under pressure. He cannot look like he's being bullied by the United States.
No, Lisa, I'm not sure this is necessarily a political issue. I'm not sure this is because every political party in this country seems to be saying the same thing. So it may not necessarily be pressure on the Prime Minister. I'm sure there's pressure on the Prime Minister. But there seems to be pressure on all political parties. It's very rare that the BJP and Congress speak together on an issue. But you heard Chandan Mitra speak. He seems to be backing everything the government has done so far, Lisa. So I'm not sure it's a political move by the Prime Minister at this stage.
Well, and as you know, in the U.S., apologies can become political. But I will say, I think in this case, that it would be understood by both Democrats, Republicans, the importance of issuing an apology. And I don't see a problem with a senior U.S. official, maybe even the senior-most U.S. official, issuing a formal apology for the way in which she was treated, because it does seem that Dr. Devyani was not accorded the kind of diplomatic measures that she was due. And this is the issue. Whether or not the arrest should have taken place, that is not really
Lisa,
the issue. The issue
I see
is
the
what
point
she
that you're.
treated
I
as
see
a
the point that
diplomat
you're
should be
making.
treated.
I wanted to come across to Mihir as well, who's been tracking the story very, very closely. Mihir, I actually want to look at the other point. I think there is a great deal of acceptance that perhaps Devyani Khobragade should not have been treated the way that she was. That being said, there are those who point out that let's just take this argument of her not having earned enough. Perhaps she was earning 30,000 rupees a month or $3 and a little bit more per hour, but all her medical expenses amounting to several $1,000s a year was paid for, her air travel was paid for, her food was paid for, her rent was paid for, electricity, gas, local transport was paid for, her clothes were paid for. If you add all of this up, then it seems that then according to one account she was earning more than $12 an hour.
Well, I think that's a dangerous and self-serving argument that the Indian Foreign Service has put forward. Essentially, the reason why minimum wage laws are counted only in cash is very important, which is to ensure that employers do not have the choice of where somebody lives, what kind of health care they are given, and so on and so forth. All right? In this case, the Indian Foreign Service is claiming, oh, you know, we should put in $1,000, $1,200 a month because she was given a lovely place to live in central Manhattan. Maybe she didn't want to live in central Manhattan. She lived in central Manhattan because Mrs. Khobragade wanted her at her beck and call. That is why she lived in central Manhattan.